What if I told you the Vikings were more than just bloodthirsty raiders? That their ships reached the shores of North America centuries before Columbus? That their gods demanded human sacrifice? And that their forgotten stories still shape the world we live in today? This isn't just a tale of axes and longships. It's a journey into the hidden world of the Norse, where myth and reality collide. Welcome to the Viking Age, inside the world of blood, glory, and exploration. What kind of people does a land create when it offers no mercy? In the northernmost reaches of Europe, nature writes its own rules. Here, winters stretch endlessly, and the sun clings to the horizon. Towering fjords slice into the coastline like scars of ancient battles. The forests whisper with age, and the mountains brood in silence. It is a land both beautiful and brutal, Scandinavia. And it is here, in this crucible of cold, hunger, and endless twilight, that the Vikings were born, long before they were feared across Europe. They were survivors, farmers, hunters, fishermen, men and women hardened by a land that showed no kindness. Their world wasn't just carved in stone. It was etched in struggle, in the frostbitten silence of north. They learned not just to endure, but to thrive. They raised cattle and sowed barley, gathered berries and hunted elk, but always the sea called. It was not merely a barrier. It was a highway, a source of life, and later, of power. Generations before the first Viking raid, these Norse people were already becoming seafarers, slowly weaving sails from wool and carving sleek hulls from pine. The ocean was destiny, the winds their companion. As the rest of Europe settled into the slow rhythm of the early medieval period, the Norse world remained restless. Villages dotted the coasts and valleys of what we now call Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. But unlike the feudal kingdoms of the south, these northern communities had no kings, only chieftains bound by loyalty and strength. Authority was earned, not inherited, and survival belonged to the strong. This was a society of equals and rivals, a world where glory wasn't given, it was seized, where a man's reputation was worth more than gold. Every insult could spark a blood feud. Every celebration could turn into a saga. Songs, not scrolls, preserved history. And around every hearth, tales of old gods and ancient heroes breathed life into dark winters. But something changed in the 8th century. Pressures grew. Land became scarce. Population swelled. And beyond the horizon, word spread of weaker lands, of monasteries filled with silver, of kingdoms bloated with wealth and arrogance. To the Norse, this was an opportunity. It was invitation. In 793 AD, a storm made landfall, not of rain or wind, but of iron and fire. The monastery of Lindisfarne, on the coast of northern England, was a peaceful sanctuary of monks and manuscripts. It had stood undisturbed for over a century. But on that summer day, longships sliced through the fog and struck like lightning. The raiders came ashore without warning. They killed, they burned, and they took silver chalices, golden crucifixes, slaves. Europe had never seen anything like it. The age of the Viking had begun. But make no mistake, the raid on Lindisfarne wasn't the beginning of violence. It was the beginning of memory. The Norse had always been warriors, even before they were Vikings. The difference now was scale, purpose, reach, and it all began with the land that forged them. To understand the Vikings, you must understand their world. The long winters taught them patience. The brief summers taught them urgency. The harsh terrain taught them resilience. And the isolation bred a hunger for land, for fame, for the unknown. And above all, the sea made them explorers. From childhood, Norse boys were taught to read the stars, feel the wind, know the currents. A good sailor could travel hundreds of miles and return without a map. A great one could vanish into the horizon and return with treasure, stories, and scars. And yet, for all their violence, they were not savages. They were artisans, blacksmiths, poets. Their boats were not just war machines. They were works of art. Their language, Old Norse, was rich and rhythmic, filled with words that would one day shape English itself. Sky, knife, skull, window. Their gods walked with them, and their ancestors watched them. Everything had meaning. Everything was connected. the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil, stretched into every corner of their beliefs. Life was not linear, it was cyclical. Fate was woven, not chosen, and a man's honor was his compass. But why now? Why did the Viking Age erupt when it did? Historians point to several clues. Political instability across Europe left many coasts vulnerable. Internal conflicts within Scandinavia drove rival clans to seek fortune elsewhere, and advancements in shipbuilding gave them the tools to strike swiftly and vanish like ghosts. The perfect storm of timing, technology, and temperament. And perhaps it was inevitable. You cannot cage a people raised by the sea. You cannot tame a culture that views death in battle as glory. And you cannot ignore civilization with one hand on the oar and the other on the sword. The first century of Viking raids would leave Europe in chaos. Monasteries would burn. Kings would tremble. But the story doesn't stop at destruction, because what the world remembers as a reign of terror was, in truth, the beginning of a transformation. From icy isolation to global infamy, the Norse journey had only begun. They would not only raid, they would trade, settle, conquer, and explore. From the rivers of Russia to the sands of Baghdad, from the stormy cliffs of Scotland to the icy edges of North America. But every journey begins with a spark. And in the case of the Vikings, it was the land that lit the fire. This was only the beginning. In Chapter 2, we uncover the greatest weapon the Vikings ever built. One that floated silently across oceans and shattered entire kingdoms.